Am I really hearing from God or is it something else? This is William Hemphill, and I just want to share some thoughts today about hearing from God a little bit from a theological and a psychological aspect. Was working with a client, and one of the things that they talked about is how oftentimes in church or in other places, people would talk about how they've heard from God. And because they heard from God, they had received direction on doing something. Sometimes that direction was good. Sometimes that direction may have not been so good, but they like to say they've heard from God. And so that's a term I think, especially in Baptist or charismatic or Pentecostal circles, people tend to use that term a lot. What does it mean, though, to hear from God? In my work, and I will even say in my own life experiences, I've seen three or four things that people usually mean when they say they heard from God. First one is this: an audible voice. I cannot say that I have ever experienced an audible voice. Maybe one time in my entire life, I may have experienced something, but I can't truly recall the specifics right now. But there are people who often say they hear an audible voice speaking to them. Now, the question that I often ask is, how do we know that's the voice of God? And how do we know it's not maybe an issue of mental illness or schizophrenia or something else going on? And I asked this question because when I was a chaplain in the hospital, I knew somebody that was actually 1013. Actually, they were locked in the hospital. They were locked in the mental health ward because they said they heard from God. Well, part of their hearing from God was smearing blood and other things on the walls and things that were very destructive. And so, what I like to say on that first one, then, the audible voice hearing from God is, does it help you to walk in the fruit of the Spirit? Does that voice you hear help you to love God, love your neighbor, love yourself, treat people with kindness, compassion, dignity, bring about joy, patience, all of these other fruits of the Spirit? Does that voice lead you to do those things, and does it line up scripturally? That's a first principle that you may want to look at if you've heard an audible voice. Because I imagine the difference between those who've heard an audible voice and they've done something good and the person that I encountered and worked with who was actually in the mental health institution. They both heard voices, but in this case, that voice led to destruction in that person's case. And so we want to measure, does that voice lead us to doing something healthy, well, and good, or is it calling us to do something destructive? That's one measure when we talk about hearing from God. Another thing that I've seen when people talk about hearing from God is that a passage of scripture or something they've read or heard has inspired them or hit them in their spirit. That's what I hear from a lot. And so a lot of people take scripture and read it and get direction. That's very good. That's very important. Sometimes things happen from where people read something or they hear something else and they draw some inspiration. And those things allow people to do good works. We could say that's hearing from God because we're inspired to do something that is helpful to people. I would say that same principle applies even as we read this. Does this direct us to do something good, helpful, praiseworthy, honoring God, loving people, loving and caring for ourselves? Is it respectful or is it harmful? So that would be principle number two. Principle number three. Sometimes we say we hear from God and it's the desire of our hearts. God does promise to give us the desires of our hearts, but it's as we choose to follow the Lord. And so the desires of our hearts can be good things, the desires of our hearts can be bad things. For instance, I like to say one of the desires of my heart is to eat a whole gallon of chocolate ice cream. While that may be good and a great desire, it's not healthy for me, and my body will remind me of that sooner or later. And so the desires of our hearts, nothing wrong with having desires of our hearts. It's what do those desires lead to? Some people have desires in their hearts to start a ministry, to start a therapy business, hey, to go to therapy, to get married, all of these different things. Are those desires helpful or are they harmful to you or somebody else? And so that's important to know. And then I like to say life lessons. God can speak to us through life lessons. When we sit back and we look at our experiences and we see what's gone on and we look back and say, hey, what have I learned from that? That's a way that God can speak to us very powerfully. What have we learned from the great experiences in our lives, and what have we learned from the challenging experiences in our lives? So I just wanted to share some thoughts briefly. Did God speak to me? I think these are principles that can and will help us discern that better. This is William Hemphill. Thank you for listening to me today. If this message has blessed you, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, The Empowered Life with William Hemphill. Also, take a look below. I have a new book out, The Confidence Walk, Silencing Your Inner Critic so you can walk in consistent confidence. I think it's a blessing. It'll be a blessing to so many people to build that confidence so we can walk in faith to do the things that God would have us to do. Please take a look at that. Hit the link below. Please feel free to purchase, and I hope it continues to bless you in many ways. Take care and have a wonderful and blessed day.